Welcome to Tattoo Tabletop. My name is James, and today we are going to discuss something very near and dear to my heart, and near and dear to the heart of any hobby person out there: burnout. Now, for those of you who have not experienced burnout, or maybe it's something you're very familiar with, hobby burnout is when you just kind of get to a point where you just don't want to paint, you don't want to build, you don't really want to do anything. It happens to every single miniature painter, every single project out there. It's gonna happen. It's unavoidable, like gravity or taxes. um, so we're gonna cover a few different tips, and it's just gonna be a nice short video because obviously we are approaching the holidays very soon. Christmas is coming up, and that's why I'm also shooting in my room with my phone versus in the studio with a nicer camera. Finger guns, as you probably know, a huge fan of finger guns at this point. So, three main tips when you are experiencing hobby burnout. Number one, take a break. I mean, obviously, take a break. If you're running into a project, or maybe you're just not feeling painting any of your miniatures, then just take a break. Play some video games, watch some movies, write, paint landscapes. I don't know, do what you want, but take a break. Sometimes it's nice to just step away from the hobby for a second, especially if you're kind of barreling towards an event of some kind, and you've just maybe you took on way too big of a workload and you're running out of time, and you're just okay, I just need to step away for a second. Well, maybe not if you're running out of time. Well, you figure that part out. But just do something else, and sometimes a nice reset is just what you need. Number two, sit down with a completely different model and just paint. Hear me out. It doesn't have to be for your project, it doesn't have to be for your army, it doesn't have to be for much of anything. If there was just a model that's really caught your eye and that you're really interested in painting, just sit down, set aside 30 minutes, just 30 minutes, to just sit down and paint it for a little bit. I think you will be pleasantly surprised at how far you actually take that. There's been many times where I've been burnt out myself, whether it was working on a project or working on a series of models or a unit, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. And at one point, I just saw a different model, and I just picked it up for my collection. I was like, you know what? I haven't touched this. Started painting. I was like, I'm just going to paint for 30 minutes. And before I know it, I finished the thing. Finished the whole thing. I remember when I was working on my Dark Angel specifically, I had a Sanguinary Priest for my Blood Angels that I had been working on and that I had built, but I'd never really actually started on. I was like, you know what? Might as well. I've been painting too much green. It's been driving me bonkers. So I just sat down, started on the Sanguinary Priest, finished the whole thing that night. And it reinvigorated my love of the hobby, reinvigorated my passion for painting, and it allowed me to go back to that project with a clear head. So sometimes you just need a palette cleanser. Just pick up a different model, set yourself a very limited time, 30 minutes, because in that way, if you're not overly committing to an hour or 2 hours, then it feels less of a burden. And it's what gets your butt in the chair, turns on your lamp, and gets you started. If you don't pick up that paintbrush, then what's the point? And the bigger the project is, the bigger the times that you set aside, like an hour or 2 hour, the less likely you're going to do any of those things. So just pick up a model, sit down, start painting for a little bit, see if it sticks. Number three, try something else, man. I don't know. There's a lot of elements of this hobby, and there are certain things that we can get locked into, especially when you're feeling the sort of hobby burnout. Maybe if you're experiencing hobby burnout on the painting side, maybe go back to some of those models that you haven't built before and just build. I often find that when I'm building, I can listen to podcasts, I can watch movies, I can do other things in the background, and it just kind of becomes more or less, relaxing task, even though oftentimes I find more recently that I've been enjoying the painting side more than the building side, but vice versa. You can do the same thing. Maybe you're just sick of building and it's driving you nuts. If you smell plastic glue one more time, you're just gonna nosedive into the short end of a pool. Shallow end. I meant shallow end. But don't do that either. Don't dive into that short end of that pool. Don't you do it. It's not wide enough. But basically, just try something else. Clearly, something's not working for you, and you just need to just do some other element of the hobby, or it just goes back to number one. Take a break. Maybe there's just something else you need to do, or try different miniatures. This is actually one of the biggest parts and one of the biggest proponents that I highly, highly recommend. I have painted many, many miniatures. Obviously, I am a huge Warhammer nerd, and that's very clear to see. There's so much up there, there's so much up there, and there's more stuff where right down there. There's whole armies in there. There's whole armies over here too. My chair is just blocking it. I love Warhammer. It's one of my absolute favorite things. One of my favorite settings, one of my favorite IPs. However, I've painted Fallout miniatures. Not as much fun, but that's just me personally. I know some people who absolutely love them. I painted Star Wars Imperial Assault miniatures. Those have been super fun. I love painting Marvel Crisis Protocol miniatures. The miniatures are so cool and so unique, and they have some of my absolute favorite superheroes. It's just a good time. I even painted up the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows board game. Now, board game pieces are obviously massively different to just, full-on plastic kits like Warhammer, but it's still something different, and it's going to give you new ideas and new approaches on how to even start tackling some more of your Warhammer models. Maybe there's something you learn painting those rougher pieces that you can actually translate over to the Warhammer pieces, or, better yet, it gives you an appreciation of those kits. So in that way, when you go back to work on them, you're just like, oh my gosh, this is actually so much easier than what I was originally running into. And you're just so much happier about it. Like I said, keeping this nice and short, so I just wanted to release this out there before Christmas, obviously. Hopefully you get some new kits, hopefully you get some new models, and hopefully you get painting. But in the meantime, fantastic new announcement. I am officially sponsored, and it's by one of my favorite places, The Forge. Hell yeah. Check this out.
Today's video is sponsored by The Forge for all your hobby nerd needs. Whether it's Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar, Marvel Crisis Protocol, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Lorcana, and a plethora of board games, The Forge has what you need. The Forge has been my go-to shop, and the inventory has only grown. If there's something you don't see on the shelves, fill out a product request form on their website. Thank you to The Forge for sponsoring this video.
Well, that about wraps it up for me. I've been Tattooed Tabletop, and in the meantime, go paint something.